Hello and welcome to uh, our school curricula vector-borne disease presentation. My name is Trevi Davis. I'm part of the Muskie Student Health Corps that helped put this project together, along with Sara Robinson, our Maine CDC epidemiologist. She'll be giving a presentation, well, two presentations today on vector-borne diseases. I'm going to start off by just a quick explanation of how the webinar will go. Um, I'm going to give a little explanation as to how the curriculum can be used in your classroom, and then we'll move on to our presentations from Sara, along with a little bit of question and answer periods after each presentation so that if you have any questions, they can be answered. And then finally, we'll give you sort of some directions as to what to do next and how to use this in your classroom. All right, so the first thing to do is to find your way to our Lyme disease webpage at the Maine CDC website. So that's at maine.gov/Lyme. And this is also easily Googled Lyme curricula, Maine Lyme curricula. The first link will get you right there. And then once you get to that website, you'll end up right here. And at this website, there are two different links which will take you to the same place. The school curricula link on the left-hand side of the page and the resources for educators right in the middle there will both take you to where you're headed. So once you're there on that page, and I'll actually show you what that looks like, if you would click the download the entire curriculum zip for each module for the Mosquito curriculum and the Lyme curriculum, you'll have all the materials you need. And if you need each individual piece, they're also available as links above this on the page right here. So next, after you downloaded those materials, you can either present the educational presentation yourself, or our teacher's outline gives sort of a dialogue and narrative that you can follow along with during the presentation, or you can use this recorded presentation from today's webinar for your class presentation. Then, after that short class presentation, you can break up into small groups, and we've designed 4 small interactive hands-on activities for each, the mosquito and the tick curriculum. And after that, there are also additional materials in each zip file, which are available for take-home handouts as well as take-home activities. And then finally, this curriculum has been designed to have a pre and a post test. We want to make sure that what we're teaching is actually sort of being verified, and that's important to us. So if you'd please pre-test your students before you take them through the curriculum and post-test them 2 weeks afterwards, that is helpful to us and to you, so that you know that your students learned something. All right, so I'm going to leave it there and hand it over to Sara for a presentation on mosquito-borne illness. Here she is.
Hi, my name is Sara Robinson. I'm an infectious disease epidemiologist for Maine CDC, and some of the things that I work on include vector-borne diseases, so ticks, diseases carried by both ticks and mosquitoes. So today we're going to start out with the mosquito program. So what we're going to learn during this next 15 to 20 minutes, we're going to learn about some mosquito biology, what mosquitoes look like, where mosquitoes live, and then we're going to get into the public health aspects of mosquitoes. Can they carry diseases? What happens if a disease-carrying mosquito bites me? And finally, we're going to get into what is probably the most important part of this, is prevention. So first up, what do mosquitoes look like? In Maine, there are many different kinds of mosquitoes. We have about 45 different species of mosquitoes here in Maine, but all mosquitoes have some things in common. They are insects, so they have 6 legs. They have wings. They have a proboscis. This is where what they use to pierce our skin and to drink the blood. They all have antennae, and they have the thorax and the abdomen. And the abdomen is the part of the mosquito that when they are feeding fills up with blood and turns that bright red color. So next up we have the mosquito life cycle. Mosquitoes are dependent upon water to complete their life cycle. So an adult mosquito will lay eggs, and these eggs are in the water. Those eggs will hatch into larvae, and these larvae are hanging actually down from the surface of the water. So it's kind of hard to see, but right along this edge right here is the surface of the water. So they're using this to actually breathe from the surface. So after they spend some time as larvae, they'll molt into pupa, and these are also called tumblers. So if you have water that has mosquito pupa in it, you shake it, they kind of roll down, and then they spin around, and then they'll float back up to the top again. And then from the pupa emerge the adult mosquitoes. Adult mosquitoes require blood meals to complete their life cycle, so they'll take a blood meal before they are able to lay eggs again, and the life cycle starts all over again. Again, this is very dependent on water. They require water to lay the eggs, for the larvae to hatch, and for the pupa to emerge. So where do mosquitoes live? Well, I already mentioned that there's 45 different species of mosquitoes here in Maine, so they have some different types of habitats. Some mosquitoes like bogs and swamps. These have an assortment of different kinds of plants. The water tends to be clear, that tea kind of murky brown color. This is the preferred habitat for mosquitoes that can carry Eastern equine encephalitis. The most common mosquito here in Maine that is a carrier of Tripoli is the Culicida melanura mosquito, and it's areas like this that you will find them, that these are stagnant water, they may be flood or snow melt water, and that's where the mosquito larvae will hatch and where the mosquitoes will come from. On the other hand, the mosquitoes that carry West Nile virus tend to be container mosquitoes. So these mosquitoes like artificial containers, so catch basins, flower pots, tires, buckets, anything that might be out in your yard that holds water. So they like stagnant, motionless, temporary pools. This is important for mosquitoes. I showed you on the life cycle that in their larva stage, they are attached to the surface of the water and they have to breathe. If a mosquito can't breathe, they're going to die. So if there's water that's moving, if it's quick moving water, it's going to keep them down and unable to breathe. And so mosquito eggs will not hatch in that sort of water. But any kind of stagnant water is sufficient for mosquitoes to complete their life cycle in. So this includes things like holes in trees. So there are natural reservoirs, and then there are these man-made containers. And this is important for us when we are going to get to the prevention cycle. But these are the habitats that mosquitoes that carry West Nile virus are likely to be found in. And the most common mosquito for that is Culex pipiens here in Maine. So we're going to move on to mosquitoes and people. As you all know, mosquitoes like people. There are different types of mosquitoes that like to feed on different types of things, and the way they are attracted to this is different. So from far away, a mosquito is attracted to the carbon dioxide that we breathe out. This is just normal breathing. This isn't anything exciting, but that is what attracts mosquitoes. And when mosquitoes get closer to a person, they are attracted by the heat and moisture, and they can also see the person. So there are two ways for mosquitoes to find us. So can mosquitoes carry diseases? If I was there in front of you, I would ask you, can anybody name a disease that's carried by a mosquito? And obviously here I have the answers up for you. There are two mosquito-borne diseases that are considered endemic in Maine. So endemic means that they are found here all the time. And the two diseases that are found here in Maine are Eastern equine encephalitis, also known as Triple E. And Triple E is one of the most serious mosquito-borne diseases in the United States. It has a very high hospitalization rate. Out of the people who get sick, a third of those will die. And so it's a very serious disease. We also have West Nile virus. West Nile virus occurs throughout the United States. Maine was actually the last state in the continental US to have a case of West Nile virus, but we had our first human case in 2012. And this is slightly different than Triple E. Triple E is mostly found on the East Coast. So Maine is one of the few states that actually have a risk of this disease. West Nile, there's a risk throughout the entire US. So this is the transmission cycle. So humans are not the carriers or the reservoirs for Triple E and West Nile. It's actually birds. So I mentioned before that some mosquitoes have different tastes, just like some humans like some different foods. Some mosquitoes really like to feed on birds. Some mosquitoes really like to feed on animals. Some mosquitoes really like to feed on reptiles. Some mosquitoes like to feed on humans, and some mosquitoes don't care. So what happens is the birds will get infected with either Triple E or West Nile virus, and a mosquito will feed on them, and a mosquito will pick up the virus. And then when the mosquito feeds on another bird, the mosquito will transmit the virus to that bird. So there's multiple birds getting infected, there's multiple mosquitoes getting infected. So this continues on in the bird population until at some point in time, a mosquito that either doesn't care, that will eat anything, feeds on a bird, and then moves over and feeds on something else, like a horse or a human. And when this happens, that's when the horses and the humans get infected. The good news for us, if there is good news with this, is that we are dead-end hosts. And what that means is that if a mosquito that is infected with West Nile virus bites a horse, bites a mammal, bites a human, we are not going to get enough of that virus in our bloodstream so that if another mosquito bites us, we cannot infect another mosquito. So we can get ill from the disease, but we cannot pass that virus on to another mosquito. So what happens if a disease-carrying mosquito bites me? Well, oftentimes nothing will happen. A lot of these diseases, people do not have symptoms. But when you do, the symptoms can be very vague. They can include fever, headache and body aches, and lack of energy. Symptoms can be from mild to severe. So a lot of people will have a fever, a headache. They won't feel good for a day or two, and then they'll feel better, and they will never know that they actually had West Nile virus. But both of these viruses can cause encephalitis, which is a swelling of the brain. And anytime the brain is affected, that can be very serious. It can put you in the hospital. It can also kill you. And this is the severe case. It's not all the time, but symptoms appear usually 3 to 18 days after their infection, and symptoms can last 1 to 2 weeks. Unfortunately, for these viruses, there is no treatment. There's only supportive care. So the doctor will do what they can to reduce pressure on the brain and to make the person more comfortable. So how can I protect myself? This is the most important part here. To get a mosquito-borne disease, you have to be bitten by a mosquito. So first off, wear protective clothing. The number one thing to do is wear long pants and long sleeve shirts. Mosquitoes need access to your skin to actually begin feeding. So if you are completely covered, it makes it harder for the mosquitoes to get to your skin. Number 2 is use a repellent. There are 5 EPA-approved repellents. 4 of them are approved for use on skin, and 1 of them is approved for use on clothing. The 4 that are approved for use on skin are DEET, picaridin, IR3535, and oil of lemon eucalyptus. Oil of lemon eucalyptus is the only all-natural repellent that is EPA approved as being effective against mosquitoes. We also have permethrin, which is a repellent that is sprayed on clothing, and this repels both mosquitoes and ticks. And the great thing about permethrin is that it's long-lasting, and so you can treat your clothing, and if you treat your clothing, they will be repellent for up to 6 to 8 washes after treatment. The mosquitoes that carry diseases in Maine are most likely to be active from dawn until dusk. And so if you can take precautions during those hours of the day, you're more likely to avoid your exposure to mosquitoes. So if we can be extra careful from dawn until dusk, if we can be inside, done with our sports practices, not be out playing in the yard after dark, that is going to help us reduce our chances of being exposed to these mosquitoes that might potentially be carrying diseases. There's also a few things that you can do to make your house safer. First up is check your door and window screens to make sure there's no tears in them. Mosquitoes are small, they can get through some small spaces, but if you can keep them out of your house, obviously you're going to keep yourself from being bitten. So if you have a screen door, make sure there's no holes in it. If you have windows that don't have screens, you should consider putting screens in those windows. There's a lot we can do around our house to get rid of water holding containers. Old tires, cans, bottles, other things that are left outside should be disposed of if they can be. If they're things that need to be there, or if they're long-term things, you can drill holes in them to help the water drain out. If it's some sort of standing thing that you would like to have water, so if you have a bird bath or if you have flower pots or pet bowls, make sure you change the water in those once a week. If you change the water once a week, you'll wash out any mosquito larvae, they won't have a chance to hatch, and then you won't be getting mosquito breeding on your own property. So this is our Fight the Bite message. This is just a reminder of the things that you can do to protect yourself against West Nile and Triple E. It's all the things that we went over, but just to refresh, wear long sleeves and long pants, use repellent on your skin and clothes, take extra precautions at dusk and dawn, and use screens on your windows and doors. And finally, drain artificial sources of standing water, particularly where you live, work, and play. This is all of our information. If you have questions, we have a disease reporting and consultation line that is operated as manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we also have an email address that is reviewed weekdays. We have our Maine CDC website, which has information on all of these vector-borne diseases. And we also partner very closely with Maine Medical Center Research Institute. They do a lot of mosquito trapping. They're very knowledgeable about mosquito biology. And here's some information to get a hold of them as well. And now I am happy to take any questions if you might have them. It's probably easiest to type them in the chat box, and I will read them out and answer them. I'll give you a minute or two to type anything in that you might have. Okay, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the tick portion of our discussion. So this is what we're going to learn about for this. Our presentation is very similar to the mosquito presentation. We're going to start out with some tick biology. What do ticks look like? How do we tell the difference between ticks? Where do ticks live? Why is it important to remove a tick? And then we are going to get into some disease information. And finally, we will end, as always, with protection messages and prevention. So to start out, what do ticks look like? Here in Maine, we have 14 different species of ticks. Ticks are all similar, the same as mosquitoes. They all have some very similar body parts. Ticks are actually not insects. They're in the arachnid family, and so they have 8 legs, just like spiders do. Ticks do not have antennas, and one of the hallmarks of ticks is that they have a scutum or a shield, which is this part right behind the head on all of the ticks. So this picture shows 3 different types of ticks, and they all have these scutums behind the head. And like mosquitoes, the scutum will stay the same size when a tick is feeding, but their abdomen part is what will fill up with blood as they feed. And this is a picture that shows the size of ticks. There are different ticks and they are different sizes, particularly at different stages in their life cycle. So a deer tick nymph is very small, whereas a deer tick adult is about the same size as a dog tick nymph or a little bit larger. So the size of the tick is somewhat indicative of the type of tick, but not always, because they could be in different life stages. So ticks are unfortunately very good at what they do. They have this barbed beak, and that is how, when a tick bites onto you, that's how they hold onto you. So when a tick bites you, it's going to secrete anticoagulant and anesthetic. So the anticoagulant will make it so that your blood keeps flowing so you don't clot up and stop bleeding for them. And the anesthetic makes you numb so you don't feel that the tick biting and you don't feel that the tick is feeding on you. The deer tick, this is a picture of the deer tick. They have these barbs. So when they bite onto you, if you've ever tried to remove a tick, it's kind of hard. And that's because these barbs are helping it hold into your skin. Ticks can be very, very small. As this picture shows, this is the tip of a pencil, and this is a deer tick that's embedded. So ticks can be very, very small, very hard to see. So how do we tell the difference between ticks? This is important here in Maine because we have 2 very common ticks, the deer tick and the dog tick, but only the deer tick is known to carry disease. So it's important to be able to tell the difference between the 2 kinds of ticks. And the trick to doing this here in Maine is by their scutums, which is, again, is this part on the backs. So for a deer tick, the scutum is always going to be a dark brownish color. And again, no matter what size the tick is, if it's a nymph, if it's an adult, if it's a fully engorged adult, you will always be able to see this spot behind their head. So deer ticks, the adult deer ticks are more common in the spring and the fall. If you see a normal sized tick in the spring and the fall, it's more likely to be a deer tick than a dog tick. But deer tick nymphs are around during the summer as well. So it's anytime that the temperature is above freezing, there is a risk for ticks. But you can tell a little bit from the season what type of tick it might actually be. So this is a dog tick. Again, how you tell them apart is their scutum, so behind their head. Right here, for a dog tick female, it's going to have these red, or this white section of their shield. For a dog tick male, it actually has white racing stripes, so it goes down along their back. But they will always have the white on their back. And dog ticks are more common during the summer. So if you find a large tick during the summer, it is most likely going to be a dog tick. So where do ticks live? Ticks actually are very susceptible to drying, so they have some habitats that they really prefer. They like the leafy tree covered areas, forests and shrubby areas. This gives them some protection from the direct sunlight. It protects them from the winds, and it gives them the plant material that they will be on to actually find a host. So on the converse side, there are areas that ticks really do not like. Like I said, ticks are very, very susceptible to drying into the wind. So if you have open areas, if you have a big field that has been mowed short, it's very unlikely that you will find ticks in this area. So how do ticks move? This is one of the most common questions that I get and one of the biggest misconceptions that we have. Ticks do not jump and they do not fly. They crawl. So what a tick normally does is it crawls to the edge of a piece of grass or a brush and it waves its front legs out and it waits for somebody or something to walk by. And as you walk by and you brush up against that tick, it's going to grab onto you and hold onto you. So this is important to know for prevention messages that a tick cannot jump from the tree onto you. It's not going to fly. It's not going to fall out of the sky. You are going to brush up against that tick and then it will crawl to the spot that it's going to feed on. So why do we remove a tick? Like I said, ticks can carry diseases, so we want to remove them as soon as possible. For Lyme disease, which is the most common disease that is carried by a tick has to be attached for at least 24 hours, most commonly 36 to 48 hours before it can transmit the disease. So if we can find the tick early and we can get the tick off, we can prevent diseases. So in Maine, there are 4 diseases that we know that Maine ticks can carry. By far the most common disease is Lyme disease. It's the second most commonly reported infectious disease in Maine. Second up is anaplasmosis. A lot of people haven't heard of this disease, but it is on the rise. Our case counts have doubled for the last 3 years in a row. So we're seeing more and more cases of this. Babesiosis is an emerging disease in Maine. We're seeing steadily increasing numbers here in Maine, but babesiosis can be fairly serious and put people into the hospital, and so it's something that we want people to be aware of. And finally, Powassan. Powassan is a very rare disease. It's actually the only known tick-borne viral disease here in Maine. So instead of being a bacteria or a parasite like the other diseases are, it's actually a virus. It is rare in Maine, but we know that it is a risk here in Maine. And unfortunately for us, all 4 of these diseases can be carried by the same tick, which is the deer tick. So Lyme disease is the most common. What is Lyme disease? It's a bacteria. It's caused by the bacteria Borrelia burgdorferi. This bacteria is a spirochete. So if you look at this picture, you can see that the bacteria is actually spiraled, kind of like a corkscrew, and that's one of the hallmarks of the spirochete bacteria. And this bacteria can infect not only humans, but it can also affect animals. It's fairly common for dogs to become infected with Lyme disease as well. So how do I know if I have Lyme disease? Well, the first symptom is a bullseye rash, and that's what this picture is. So a bullseye rash is a red spot in the middle that tends to have a clearing area and then another ring of red around it. This is the most common symptom of Lyme disease. It occurs in about 60 to 70% of cases. The thing to pay attention to is it is usually at the site of the bite, but not always. So it's a possibility that you might be bitten on your leg and the bullseye rash shows up on your back. So if you've been bitten by a tick, you want to make sure that you're aware of this and you check your skin all over for this potential rash. The other symptoms are fairly vague. You can have sore muscles, you can be very tired, have chills, fever, headaches, and swollen lymph nodes. If you have any of these symptoms, we recommend that you see your doctor. We tell people that if you have what feels like the flu in the summer, you just don't feel good, you have some aches, pains, that you should go see a doctor, that could be a vector-borne disease, either a tick or a mosquito-borne disease. So again, how do I protect myself? This is really important with ticks. There's a lot of this disease around, and we want to make sure that kids and adults can go outside and enjoy Maine while still being safe. So first up again is protective clothing. Ticks need skin to attach to as well. And an odd fact about ticks is they usually like to crawl up. So if you are wearing socks and then you have your pants and your pants are tucked into your socks and your shirt is tucked into your pants, that tick is going to keep on crawling up. So the hope is that it won't get attached to you early. It will be crawling up your body and you'll be able to see it and be able to get rid of it before it has a chance to touch your skin. The other protective clothing that you can wear is light colored clothing. Ticks are dark. They're that dark brownish black, so if you're wearing lighter colored clothing, ticks are easier to see. Next up is use a repellent. These are the same repellents that are approved for mosquitoes, so there are 5 of them. 4 of them are approved for use on skin, and that's DEET, picaridin, IR3535, and oil of lemon eucalyptus. Oil of lemon eucalyptus is the only natural repellent that is approved as being effective. We always recommend that you follow the labels on all of these repellents, particularly oil of lemon eucalyptus. You have to reapply frequently. And that the 5th repellent is for use on clothing, and that's permethrin. And the great thing about permethrin is that you treat your clothing and it will last for several washes afterwards. So you can treat your clothing, if you have clothes that you wear outside a lot, you can treat them with permethrin and it will last through 6 to 8 washes. Next up is to be careful in tick-infested areas. We know that ticks don't jump and they don't fly, so you actually have to brush up next to a tick in order for it to get on you. So if you're going hiking, if you can stay in the middle of the trail where you don't have the grass and the brush right up next to your skin, you're going to reduce your exposure to ticks. So if you can avoid brushing up right against bushes, against grass, you're going to reduce your exposures to ticks. And finally, very important is to perform daily tick checks. I mentioned that ticks have to be attached for at least 24 hours to transmit Lyme disease. So if you get in the habit now to do a tick check every day, you will be catching the ticks before they've had a chance to stay on for 24 hours. So tick checks are very important. We want to check every day, and we always recommend doing a tick check with both your fingers and your sight. So ticks can be very, very small. I always tell people to get to know your freckles. If your freckle is moving, it is not a freckle, it is probably a tick, but it's so small that you might not realize it. So you want to brush your arms, brush your legs, see if you can feel anything, and look around for anything that might be a tick. Ticks like warm areas, so there's special areas on the body that you need to pay attention to. Your head, your hairline, neck, armpits, waist, between your legs, thighs, and behind your knees. These are the most common places that ticks will be attached. A tick can attach anywhere where you have skin. And the other thing to remember is ticks can get on your pets too. And so you want to do a daily tick check for your pets. If you have a dog that goes outside, they could be bringing ticks in. Those ticks could fall off the dogs and you could be exposed. So you want to protect your animals and protect yourself by doing tick checks on you and your pets. What do I do if I find a tick on me? First off, we want you to have a grown-up take it off for you. There's 2 ways that we recommend taking off ticks. One is with a tick spoon, and these are little spoons that have a notch. You can see the notch is right here, and you line that notch up with a tick. You apply a little pressure, and you continue sliding it until the tick detaches. The other way is with tweezers, and with tweezers you grasp the tick as close to your skin as possible, and you pull up gently until the tick lets go. There's a lot of other home remedies for how to remove ticks. You hear a lot about burning the ticks off and using Vaseline and alcohol. We don't recommend using any of these methods to get the ticks off. Some of them may be effective, but ticks are very good at what they do, so they only have to breathe about once every 5 minutes. So if you're trying to smother a tick, it's going to take a very long time, and we don't want you to wait that long. We'd rather have you get the tick off right away. And if you do such things as Vaseline or burning the ticks, what you're going to do is irritate the tick. And when a tick gets irritated, it can regurgitate its stomach contents into your skin. So basically, if you make a tick mad, it can throw up in your skin, and that can cause local infection, and we want to avoid that as well. So tick spoons and tweezers, those are the best ways to get the ticks off. There are things that you can do to make your house safer. So if you can keep your yards or your playgrounds or your school areas clear, if you can remove the brush and the leaf litter and the tall grasses, that's going to help reduce the number of ticks. Ticks, again, are very, very susceptible to drying. So if you have property that is up next to the woods, if you can create a dry border between your property and the woods, that is going to reduce the number of ticks. Ticks will not be able to cross that by themselves. That's not to say that they can't still come over on animals, deer, raccoons, but you're going to drastically reduce the number of ticks that will be on your property. And if you can remove plants or construct physical barriers that discourage deer, deer are known to carry ticks, hence it's called the deer tick. If you can keep the deer out of your lawn, you're going to help keep the ticks out of your lawn. So this is our tick ID poster. We want to make sure that people know what ticks are, they know how to prevent them. Shows the difference between a deer tick and a dog tick and reminds you how to remove them and our prevention messages. For more information, again, we have a 24-hour consultation line that is manned 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we have an email address, disease.reporting@maine.gov, which is monitored during the weekdays. We have our vector-borne website, which has information about all of these diseases and prevention information. Maine Medical Center Research Institute Vector-Borne Disease Lab are pretty much the experts on tick biology within the state. And UMaine Cooperative Extension offers a free tick identification service. So if you find a tick on yourself, you can go online and you can fill out the form and you mail the tick up to Orono and they will identify the tick for you as to species and level of engorgement. And now we're up to the question section again. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box, and I'll give everyone a minute or two to get their questions in.
All right, having no questions, we will move along. So this right here, pictured in front of you, is our handy tick removal kit, which includes a tick spoon, a little vial to put the tick, and a sanitizing wipe to clean up after you've removed the tick, as well as some of our informational materials about tick removal and tick identification. And what's exciting about this packet is that for the first 100 schools that participate in presenting this curriculum to their third through fifth grade classrooms, we will send them complimentary tick kits as part of participating. So every student will get their very own handy tick removal kit. As part of that as well, we will be distributing tick samples. You can see here preserved specimens of both deer and dog ticks, which have been labeled, and there's an answer key so that you can sort of use them to quiz about which tick is which, and you can see over on the left that the nymphal stage is barely visible, but when you look close, you can see them. So that's pretty cool. All right, so what to do next? You've attended this webinar. If you would please use this link that I've provided below, and I will provide it in the chat box as well so that people can access that link. It's basically a way for us to get your contact information. And with that contact information, we'll send along a contact hour certificate. And also, if you're watching this recording, yeah, we'll send it along. As part of the zip file that you've downloaded, there is a form that's meant to help you collate all of your pretest results. And if you pretest your students, collate the results, and send that form to us, that's how we will know how many students need tick kits and to which schools we're sending our tick samples so that you have those samples when you want to teach this material. If you could give us a week in advance with that pretest, that will give us some time to turn those tick kits around and get them out to you. So thank you very much for attending today. If you have any other questions, please let us know in the chat box. We'll stay online for, thank you. That's an example of our certificate that we'll send out. And yeah, so if there are any questions, we'll take them right now.